The darkness between stars was older than worlds. It moved through space like a hungry shadow, searching for something it could never name. For millions of years, it had been eating. Planets, moons, entire solar systems disappeared when it passed by. The thing that lived in the void had no name for itself. It simply was, and it was always hungry. Today felt different. Something new was coming. Far away, a large ship cut through the emptiness of space. The ship was called Perseverance, and it carried 50,000 sleeping humans inside metal walls. Most of them lay in cold sleep pods, dreaming of a new home among distant stars. Only a few hundred people stayed awake to watch over the ship. And guided through the darkness. Commander Lee Taman stood on the bridge, looking out at the stars through thick glass windows. His reflection stared back at him. He was tired. They had been traveling for 3 years since leaving Earth. The sun that gave birth to humanity was dying, and they had run away to find a new place to live. "Commander," a voice called from behind. "We are getting strange readings." Taman turned around. Dr. Kim Nara was looking at her computer screen with worried eyes. She was the ship's science officer, the person who studied new things they found in space. Her dark hair was pulled back, and her fingers moved quickly over the controls. "What kind of readings?" Taman asked, walking over to her station. "I don't." "No," Nara said. "The computers don't recognize the patterns. It's like nothing we have seen before. The energy is moving in waves, almost like it's breathing." Taman felt a cold feeling in his stomach. In space, unknown things were usually dangerous things. "Where is it coming from?" "Directly ahead of us," Nara said. "About 2 light years away." "But Commander, the readings are getting stronger." "Whatever it is, it's getting bigger or coming closer." On the other side of the galaxy, entire worlds were dying. The Altarians had been a proud race of blue-skinned people who loved mathematics and logic. They built beautiful crystal cities that reached toward their twin suns. They solved problems with pure thought and believed the universe could be understood through numbers. When the void touched their world, they tried to calculate what was happening. Their greatest minds worked together, trying to find an equation that would explain the darkness that surrounded their planet. They were still working when they ceased to exist. One moment their cities sparkled with light, the next moment there was only empty space where their world had been. The void felt satisfied. The Altarians had tasted like cold starlight and clean thoughts, simple, easy to consume. 3 systems away, the Centauri Collective shared one great mind across 1 billion bodies. They were insect-like creatures who worked together like parts of a single organism. When one of them learned something, they all knew it instantly. When one of them felt pain, they all suffered together. They had built a perfect society where no one was alone and everyone had purpose. The void found them. Next, the collective tried to fight by thinking as one, but their shared consciousness made them easy to swallow. The void took their hive mind in a single gulp, consuming 1 billion lives in the space of a heartbeat. They tasted like warm honey and cooperation. Each meal made the void stronger. Each species it consumed taught it something new about life, but the lessons were always simple. Run away, hide, fight, survive. The universe was full of life, but all life wanted the same basic things. Back on the Perseverance, Chief Engineer Park Min-ho was deep in the ship's engine room when the alarm started ringing. Red lights flashed on the walls, and his tools rattled against the metal floor. The ship's massive engines, which had been running smoothly for 3 years, began to make strange sounds. Min-ho wiped sweat from his forehead and checked the engine readings on his tablet. Everything looked normal, but something felt wrong. The ship was shaking, but not from engine problems. Something outside was affecting them. He pressed the communication button on the wall. "Bridge, this is engineering. Are we flying through something? The engines are running fine, but the whole ship feels like it's shaking. Timon's voice came through the speaker. "We don't know yet, Minho. Keep the engines ready. We might need to change course quickly." Navigator Choi Hana sat at her control station, watching the stars move past on her screen. She had been guiding the ship for 3 years, making sure they stayed on course toward their new home. Navigation in deep space was like following a map drawn on water. Everything moved, and you had to constantly adjust your path. But now the stars on her screen were behaving strangely. Some of them seemed to be disappearing, winking out like candles being blown out by wind. Others were changing color, shifting from white to red to nothing at all. "Dr. Nara," Hana called out, "are you seeing this? The stars ahead of us are vanishing." Nara looked up from her instruments. "Vanishing? Stars don't just vanish." "These ones are," Hana said. She pointed at her screen. "Look, 3 minutes ago there were 47 stars in Sector 7. Now there are only 32. The bridge fell quiet except for the soft humming of computers and life support systems. Everyone stared at Hana's navigation screen, watching. Stars disappear one by one. Timon felt his heart beating faster. In his 20 years of space travel, he had never seen anything like this. "Can you tell where they're going?" "They're not going anywhere," Hana said quietly. "They're just stopping. Like someone is turning off lights." The void sensed the approaching ship and felt curious. These new creatures were different from the others it had consumed. Their thoughts were not simple. Even from this distance, it could feel the complexity of their minds. Where other species thought in straight lines, these beings seemed to think. In circles and spirals, the dot reached out with invisible fingers, tasting the edge of their consciousness. Immediately, it pulled back. The taste was overwhelming. These creatures didn't just think about survival. They thought about things that had already happened and things that might never happen. They carried the weight of memories like heavy stones, but somehow these stones made them stronger instead of slower. The void had never encountered anything like this before. It was hungry, but it was also afraid. These new creatures might be more than it could swallow on the Perseverance. Timon made a decision that would change everything. "All hands to emergency stations. Wake up the emergency crew from cold sleep. Something is out there, and we need to be ready for anything." As the ship prepared for the unknown, the void continued to approach. For the first time in its ancient existence, it was not sure if it wanted to feed or flee. The humans were coming, carrying their strange, complex thoughts and emotions. Neither the void nor the humans knew that this meeting would change the nature of hunger itself. The darkness between stars grew deeper, and something that had never known doubt began to question what it truly wanted to consume. The Perseverance shook like a leaf in a storm. Commander Lee Taemin held onto his chair as the bridge tilted left and right. The lights flickered on and off, and sparks flew from control panels. Outside the windows, space itself looked wrong. The stars were bending and twisting like reflections in moving water. "What's happening to us?" Taemin shouted over the noise of creaking metal and alarm bells. Dr. Kim Nara gripped her computer station with white knuckles. Her screen showed numbers that made no sense. Energy readings were jumping up and down like crazy. "Something is wrapping around our ship," she said, "but it's not solid. It's like we're being grabbed by invisible hands." In the engine room, Chief Engineer Park Min-ho watched his beautiful machines struggle against forces they were never designed to fight. The engines that had carried them safely through space for 3 years were now screaming in protest. Warning! Lights covered every wall like angry red eyes. "The engines are overheating," Min-ho reported through his communication device. "Whatever has us is draining power from everything. We're losing life support on decks 5 through 8. Navigator Choi Hana stared at her instruments in confusion. According to her readings, they were still moving forward at normal speed. But according to her eyes, looking out the window, they were floating in a sea of absolute darkness. No stars, no light, Nothing but black emptiness that seemed to move and breathe. "Commander," Hana said quietly, "I think we're inside something." The void had surrounded the human ship like a giant mouth closing around food. But when it tried to swallow, something strange happened. Instead of the simple fear and desperation it expected to taste, the void encountered something that made it pause. These creatures were afraid, yes, but their fear was mixed with other feelings that the void had never experienced before. The one called Taman was afraid for his people, not just himself. His fear was wrapped around something warm and protective. The void didn't understand what it was tasting. The creature called Nara was afraid, but underneath her fear was a burning curiosity. Even as death approached, she wanted to learn and understand. Her mind was asking questions instead of just screaming for help. This was new. The void decided to look deeper. It reached into the ship with fingers made of pure darkness, searching for a mind it could touch more closely. It found the one called Hana. Navigator Choi Hana was checking the ship's position when the world around her changed. One moment she was looking at her computer screen. The next moment she was floating in empty space. But she could still breathe, and she wasn't cold. This wasn't real space. This was something else. "Hello," said a voice that came from everywhere and nowhere. It sounded like wind through caves, like water falling from great heights. "What are you?" Hana's heart was beating so fast she thought it might explode. But she had been trained for first contact situations. Even if this wasn't what anyone had expected, she knew what to do. "I'm Choi Hana," she said to the darkness around her. "I'm a human. What are you?" The void was surprised. Other creatures had screamed or begged when it spoke to them. This one was trying to have a conversation. "I am hunger," it said. "I am the ending of things. I consume life." "Why?" Hana asked. The question confused the void. Why did it consume life? It had never thought about why. It just did, like breathing or sleeping. It was what it was. "I have always consumed," the void said. "It is my nature." Hana felt sadness wash over her. Not fear now, but genuine sadness for this creature that had never known anything but hunger. "That sounds lonely," she said. "Lonely." The void rolled this word around in its consciousness like tasting something for the first time. It had consumed millions of species, but none of them had ever suggested that it might be lonely. The word felt strange and uncomfortable. "Tell me about loneliness," the void said. Hana thought about her brother Jinwoo. He had died in an accident 2 years before they left Earth. She had loved him more than anyone in the universe, and when he died, part of her died too. But somehow, the love remained. Even though he was gone, she still carried him with her every day. As she thought about Jinwoo, the void tasted her memories. It expected to find simple sadness, but instead it found something impossible. This creature loved someone who no longer existed. She carried pain and joy at the same time. She missed her brother terribly, but she also felt grateful for the time they had together. The void tried to understand this. How could loss and happiness exist in the same mind? How could pain make someone stronger instead of weaker? It was like trying to swallow fire and ice together. "Your brother," the void said, picking the thoughts from her mind. "He is gone, but you still love him." "Yes," Hana said. "Love doesn't die just because the person dies. It changes, but it doesn't go away. But it hurts you." "Yes, it hurts. But it also makes me remember who I want to be. Jinwoo always said I was brave. When I'm scared, I try to be brave because that's how he saw me. His love makes me better." The void felt something it had never felt before. Like indigestion, but in its mind instead of its stomach. This creature's emotions were too complex. They contradicted each other. How could sadness make someone happy? How could missing someone make them feel less alone? Back on the Perseverance, The rest of the crew watched in horror as Hana sat perfectly still at her station, her eyes closed and her face peaceful. She was still breathing, but she wouldn't respond to anything they said or did. "She's in some kind of trance," Dr. Nara said, running a medical scanner over Hana's body. "Her brain activity is off the charts, but physically she's fine." Tiemann made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. "Open all communication channels," he ordered. "All frequencies, all languages, everything we have." "Sir?" the communications officer asked. "If something is talking to Hana, maybe we can talk to it too," Tiemann said. "Broadcast everything, our music, our art, our history. If this thing wants to know about humans, let's show it who we are." The void suddenly found itself flooded with human thoughts and feelings from the entire ship. 50,000 sleeping minds and hundreds of waking ones all opened up at once. It was like trying to drink an ocean through a straw. The void choked on the torrent of human consciousness. So many contradictions, so many impossible combinations of emotion. These creatures carried love and hate, hope and despair, courage and fear, all mixed together in ways that made no sense. For the first time in its existence, the void let go of something it was trying to consume. The human ship slipped free from its grasp as the entity retreated into the darkness, overwhelmed and confused, but it was too late. The taste of human consciousness was already inside it, changing it in ways it couldn't understand. The void had tasted complexity, and it would never be simple again. The void floated in the darkness between stars, trying to understand what had happened to it. For millions of years, it had eaten life like drinking water. Simple, clean, easy, but the humans had been like trying to swallow liquid lightning. Every part of their consciousness fought against being consumed, that it decided to try again. The void was ancient and powerful. It had devoured entire galaxies. Surely it could handle one small ship of strange creatures. The Perseverance drifted in space, its crew working frantically to repair the damage from their first encounter. Navigator Choi Hana had woken up from her trance, but she was changed. She spoke softly about her conversation with the entity, trying to help her crewmates understand what they were facing. "It's not evil," Hana told Commander Lee Tiemann as they stood in the medical bay. "It's just hungry. It's been hungry for so long that it doesn't remember being anything else." "That doesn't make it safe," Tiemann replied. "Hungry things eat. We need to find a way to protect ourselves." Dr. Kim Nara was running tests on Hana's brain activity when the ship's alarm started ringing again. This time, the attack was different. Instead of grabbing the ship from outside, the void reached directly into their minds. Nara felt it first. One moment she was looking at medical readings. The next moment she was standing in her old laboratory on Earth. Her daughter Suman was there, 5 years old again, playing with toy dinosaurs on the floor. "Mommy, look," Suman said, holding up a plastic triceratops. "This one is my favorite because it protects the other dinosaurs." Nara's heart broke all over again. Suman had died when the Earth's sun began expanding. The radiation poisoning had taken her slowly, and Nara had been forced to watch her beautiful, brilliant little girl fade away day by day. It was the worst thing that had ever happened to her, but as the void tried to consume this memory, expecting to find simple grief it could swallow, it instead found something that confused and overwhelmed it. Yes, Nara was heartbroken. The pain of losing her daughter was like carrying a knife in her chest every day. But mixed with that pain was something else. Love. Pure, endless, unbreakable love. The kind of love that didn't die when its object died. The kind of love that transformed loss into purpose. Every day that Nara continued living, every discovery she made, every person she helped was a way of honoring Suman's memory. She would have been a scientist too, Nara whispered to the void as it rifled through her memories. She was always asking questions, always wanting to know how things worked. When I study new worlds and new life, I'm doing it for her. I'm seeing the universe through her eyes. The void tried to separate the pain from the love, to consume the simple parts and leave the complicated ones behind. But it couldn't. Human emotions were all tangled together like a ball of string. You couldn't pull out one thread without unraveling the whole thing. Meanwhile, Chief Engineer Park Min-ho was experiencing his own nightmare. The void had pulled him into a memory of his father's workshop. Old Park Min-ho had been a master craftsman who built furniture by hand. Every table, every chair was a work of art. Precision and patience, his father's voice echoed in the memory. These are the secrets of making things that last. But most important is love. You must love what you build, or it will not love you back. Min-ho's father had died just before the family was selected for the colony ship. He never got to see his son become the chief engineer of humanity's greatest vessel. But Min-ho carried his father's lessons with him every day. Every system he maintained, every repair he made was done with the careful precision his father had taught him. The void tried to taste this memory and nearly choked. Where it expected to find sadness about a dead parent, it found pride and determination and a deep connection to craftsmanship that spanned generations. Min-ho wasn't just fixing machines. He was honoring his father by building beautiful, reliable things that would carry humanity to the stars. My father never saw space, Min-ho said to the void that was invading his mind. But every bolt I tighten, every circuit I repair, he's there with me. His hands guide mine. His pride in good work lives on in everything I do. The void recoiled. This was too complex, too interconnected. How could dead people make living people stronger? How could loss become a source of power instead of weakness? But it wasn't finished. The entity reached for Commander Timon's mind, determined to find something simple it could consume. Instead, it found the weight of 50,000 lives pressing down on one man's shoulders. Timon stood on the bridge of his memory, watching Earth shrink behind them as they fled the dying sun. Every person on the ship was his responsibility. Every child in cold sleep, every scientist working to find their new home, every engineer keeping them alive in the vast emptiness of space. I dream about them every night, Timon told the void. All the people we couldn't save. All the ones who didn't make it onto the colony ships. I carry their hopes with me. We're not just running away from a dead world. We're carrying the future of humanity. The void tried to consume Timon's sense of duty and responsibility, but found it was impossibly heavy. The man wasn't just afraid of dying. He was afraid of failing everyone who trusted him. His fear was wrapped around love for his species, determination to succeed, and a willingness to sacrifice himself if necessary. I would die for any one of them, Timon said simply. Not because I have to, but because I choose to. That's what makes us human. We choose to care about each other. The void felt like it was drowning. Every human mind it touched was the same. Impossibly complex emotions all mixed together. Pain that made them stronger, love that survived death, fear that motivated courage. None of it made sense. In desperation, the void tried to consume all of them at once. Maybe if it could swallow their entire consciousness in one gulp, it wouldn't have to understand the individual pieces, but that made everything worse. 50,000 human minds connected by the void's own power began to share their experiences. The colonists in cold sleep began to dream together. The awake crew found themselves experiencing each other's memories and emotions. The void became a conduit for human connection instead of consumption. Through its own power, it was accidentally creating the largest telepathic network in human history. Every loss, every love, every hope and fear began to echo and amplify as 50,000 people shared one massive dream. The entity tried to pull back, to disconnect from the overwhelming storm of human consciousness, but it was too late. The taste of humanity was already inside it, changing its fundamental nature. The void had been simple and pure, driven only by hunger. Now it was complicated and confused, filled with contradictory emotions it didn't understand. For the first time in its existence, the void felt full, not satisfied, not hungry, but overwhelmed, like it had eaten too much of something too rich. It retreated into the darkness, leaving the human ship behind. But it could not escape what it had consumed. The humans had infected it with something worse than any virus. They had infected it with the ability to feel doubt, confusion, and the terrible weight of considering the consequences of its actions. The void was no longer sure it wanted to be hungry anymore. The void hung motionless in the emptiness between galaxies, paralyzed by feelings it had never experienced before. Inside its ancient consciousness, human memories played like broken recordings. A little girl's laughter. An old man's hands crafting. Furniture. The weight of responsibility for 50,000 lives. None of it would go away. For the first time in millions of years, the void was not hunting. It simply floated in space, trying to understand what was happening to it. Dr. Kim Nara's voice echoed in its mind. She would have been a scientist too. The void could see the child called Sumin through her mother's eyes. Curious, bright, full of questions about how the universe worked. The entity tried to imagine what it would feel like to lose something so precious. The thought was unbearable. The void had destroyed billions of worlds. How many children like Sumin had it consumed without ever noticing? How many parents like Nara had it silenced before they could grieve? The entity began to experience something it had no name for. Humans called it guilt. Meanwhile, the Perseverance continued its journey through space. The crew was shaken, but alive. Their encounter with the void had changed them too. The telepathic connection created during the entity's feeding attempt had left them more aware of each other's thoughts and feelings than ever before. Commander Lee Tiemann sat in his quarters, staring at a picture of Earth. The planet looked so blue and peaceful in the photograph. It was hard to believe it was gone now, swallowed by an expanding sun. He could feel the emotions of his crew more clearly than before. Their fear, their hope, their trust in his leadership. "Commander," a voice said from his door communication system. "You have a visitor." Tiemann frowned. No one had scheduled a meeting with him. "Send them in." The door opened, but no one entered. Instead, the lights in his room dimmed and the air grew cold. A familiar presence filled the space around him. "Hello," said the voice of wind and water that Tiemann recognized from Navigator Hannah's description. "I have come to talk." Tiemann's heart started beating faster, but he forced himself to remain calm. "You're the entity that attacked us." "I did." "Not attack," the void said, its voice coming from everywhere at once. "I tried to consume. It is what I do. But you were different. You tasted wrong." "Wrong how?" The void was quiet for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice sounded uncertain. "Too complicated, too much pain mixed with too much love. I could not separate them. I could not understand how you carry so much sadness and still continue to live." Tiemann thought about that. The sadness is part of living. Without it, the happiness wouldn't mean anything. They define each other. "I do not understand." "Think about hunger," Tiemann said. "If you were never hungry, would food taste good?" The void considered this. It had been hungry for so long that it couldn't remember not being hungry. But the human was right. Hunger made consumption satisfying. Without hunger, eating would be meaningless. The sadness makes the joy more precious. The void said slowly, "Exactly. And the love makes the loss bearable. They're all connected." The void felt something shift inside its consciousness. A new way of thinking about experience. It began to understand why human emotions were so tangled together. They were not separate things but different parts of the same whole. "I have been thinking about the child," the void said. "Sumin. Her mother carries her death like a wound, but also like a treasure." "Loss changes us," Tiemann said. but it doesn't have to destroy us. We can choose to let it make us more compassionate, more aware of how precious life is. The void thought about all the species it had consumed over the eons. The logical Altarians with their crystal cities. The cooperative Centauri collective with their shared mind. Each species had been unique, had seen the universe in their own special way. And the void had erased all of that uniqueness without ever considering what was being lost. I have been wasteful, the void said quietly. What do you mean? Each species I consumed was irreplaceable. Their thoughts, their cultures, their ways of understanding existence. I swallowed them all without ever tasting what made them special. I was eating miracles and thinking they were simple food. Timon felt a strange mix of pity and hope. This ancient entity was experiencing something like remorse. It's not too late to change. How can I change? I am hunger. It is all I know how to be. Humans were killers once, Timon said. We spent thousands of years fighting and destroying each other. But we learned to build instead of tear down. We learned to create instead of consume. If we can change, maybe you can too. The void fell silent, processing this idea. Change. It was a concept the entity had never considered. For millions of years, it had been the same thing. A force of consumption. An ending of stories. But the humans had shown it that pain could become strength, that loss could become love. Maybe hunger could become something else too. What would I become? The void asked. I don't know, Timon admitted, but you could find out. You could choose to preserve instead of destroy. You could protect the things that make each species special instead of erasing them. The idea was terrifying and wonderful at the same time. The void began to imagine what it would be like to guard civilizations instead of consuming them. To be a protector instead of a predator. To create instead of destroy. But first, it had to face what it had done. Somewhere in the depths of its consciousness, the void still carried traces of every species it had ever consumed. Not as living beings, but as memories and experiences. The Altarians' love of mathematics. The Centauri Collective's perfect cooperation. Millions of other civilizations, each with their own unique gifts. They are still inside me, the void realized. All the species I consumed. Their essence remains. Then they're not completely gone, Timon said. Maybe you could honor them by remembering what made them special. The void felt something it had never experienced before. Purpose. Not the simple drive of hunger, but a complex motivation born from understanding and regret. It wanted to make amends. It wanted to preserve what remained of the civilizations it had destroyed and protect those that still lived. I will try, the void said. I will try to become something other than hunger. What will you become? The void thought about Dr. Nara's dedication to science in honor of her daughter. About engineer Minho's careful craftsmanship in memory of his father. About navigator Hana's courage inspired by her brother's belief in her. About Timon's willingness to carry the hopes of his entire species. I will become memory, the void said. I will become the keeper of what was lost. I will make sure that nothing is ever truly forgotten again. The presence in Timon's room began to fade, but before it disappeared completely, the void spoke one more time. Thank you for showing me that endings can become beginnings. Timon sat alone in his quarters, staring at the picture of Earth and wondering if they had just witnessed the birth of something entirely new in the universe. An entity that had learned to transform its fundamental nature through exposure to human complexity. Outside his window, the stars seemed brighter somehow, as if the universe itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. 6 months had passed since the Perseverance's encounter with the void. The human colony ship continued its journey toward the Kepler system, where long-range surveys had found a planet that might support human life. But the ship and its crew were forever changed by their meeting with the ancient entity. Dr. Kim Nara stood in her laboratory, studying readings that no human scientist had ever seen before. The void had kept its promise to try to change, but the transformation was unlike anything anyone could have predicted. "Commander Tiemann to the science lab," Nara spoke into her communication device. "You need to see this." Minutes later, Tiemann arrived to find Nara staring at her computer screen with wonder in her eyes. Chief Engineer Park Minho and Navigator Choi Hanna were already there, looking equally amazed. "What is it?" Tiemann asked. "It's happening," Nara said. "The void is actually doing it. It's bringing them back." On the screen, energy readings showed something impossible. The void was using its immense power not to consume but to create. Slowly, carefully, it was reconstructing the species it had destroyed over the millennia. "Not bringing them back to life," Nara explained quickly, "but preserving their essence, their cultures, their unique ways of understanding the universe. It's creating a kind of cosmic museum." Hanna pointed to her navigation instruments. "Look at Sector 12. 3 days ago, there was nothing there but empty space. Now there's an entire crystal city floating in the void." "The Altarians," Tamman whispered. He remembered the void's description of the blue-skinned mathematicians who had tried to calculate their own destruction. "And over here," Minho added, indicating another section of their sensor data. "Structures that match the descriptions of Centauri collective hives. The void is rebuilding their worlds." The void's voice suddenly filled the laboratory, gentle now instead of threatening. "I am learning," it said. "Each species I consumed left traces inside me. Their knowledge, their art, their ways of thinking. I am giving them form again." "But why?" Tiemann asked. "Why preserve what you destroyed?" "Because you taught me that memory is another form of love," the void replied. "The way Nara carries her daughter, the way Minho honors his father, the way Hanna remembers her brother. I want to carry all the species I consumed with the same care." Over the following weeks, the void's transformation accelerated. It created vast spaces between the stars where the reconstructed civilizations could exist as living memories. The crystal cities of the Altarians pulsed with mathematical equations that solved cosmic mysteries. The Centauri collective's hives hummed with the harmony of perfect cooperation. But the void went further than just reconstruction. It began to understand what it meant to protect rather than consume. When a dying star threatened to destroy system inhabited by the Corvani, a species of peaceful traders, the void intervened. It absorbed the star's destructive energy and used it to create a new stable sun. "I am no longer hungry," the void told the crew of the Perseverance during one of their regular communications. "I am full of purpose." The entity had become something the universe had never seen before, a cosmic gardener, tending to civilizations instead of destroying them. It used its vast power to prevent wars, to stop asteroid impacts, to give struggling species the resources they needed to survive and thrive. But the most remarkable change was in how the void saw itself. Where once it had been driven by an endless, mindless hunger, now it was motivated by curiosity and compassion. It wanted to understand each species it encountered, to learn what made them unique, to help them flourish. "You have given me something I never had before," the void told Tiemann during one of their conversations. "You have given me choice. I choose to preserve rather than destroy. I choose to nurture rather than consume." The Perseverance reached the Kepler system and found the planet they had hoped for. It was beautiful, with blue oceans and green continents, perfect for human colonization. As the colony ship entered orbit, preparing to wake its 50,000 sleeping passengers, the void made one final contact. "I have a gift for you," it said. The space around the planet began to shimmer and change. The void was creating something new, something that had never existed before. It was building a network of energy that would connect the human colony to the preserved essences of all the species it had consumed over the ages. "What is this?" Nara asked, watching the energy patterns form on her instruments. A library, the void said. A connection to all the knowledge and wisdom of every civilization I ever encountered. The Altarians' mathematical insights, the Centauri collective's perfect cooperation, the artistic achievements of the Zephyrians, the philosophical wisdom of the Ethereals. All of it is yours to learn from. Why are you giving this to us? Timon asked. Because you taught me that knowledge shared is knowledge multiplied, the void replied. And because I want to make sure that no species ever has to face the challenges of existence alone again. As the human colonists began to wake from their long sleep and prepare for their new life on the planet they named Hope, they found themselves connected to a vast network of cosmic knowledge. They could learn from civilizations that had solved problems humans had never even imagined. They could benefit from the accumulated wisdom of millions of years of galactic evolution. Dr. Nara was among the first to establish communication with the preserved Altarian consciousness. Their mathematical models helped her understand the planet's ecosystem in ways that would have taken human science decades to achieve. Engineer Minho found himself working with the essence of master builders from a dozen different species, learning construction techniques that would help them build cities that lived in harmony with their new world's environment. Navigator Hana discovered that her connection to the cosmic network had given her an intuitive understanding of space and time that made her one of the most skilled pilots in human history. Commander Timon, now governor of the Hope Colony, found himself guided by the leadership wisdom of species that had successfully governed planets for millions of years. But the greatest gift the void had given them was not knowledge or power. It was perspective. The humans of Hope understood that they were part of something larger than themselves, connected to a vast community of consciousness that spanned the galaxy. The void, meanwhile, continued its work as the universe's protector and preserver. It prevented conflicts between species by helping them understand each other. It saved dying worlds by sharing resources between systems. It ensured that no species would ever face extinction alone. Years later, as Governor Timon stood on a hill overlooking the thriving city of New Earth, he often thought about their encounter with the entity that had once been pure hunger. The void had learned that consumption was not the only way to fill an emptiness inside. Connection, preservation, and nurturing could be just as satisfying. Thank you, Timon said to the stars, knowing the void would hear him across the vastness of space. Thank you, came the reply, carried on solar winds and cosmic radiation, for teaching me that even the darkest hunger can be transformed into light. The void had learned the most human lesson of all, that the greatest strength comes not from what you can destroy, but from what you choose to protect. And in protecting the diversity and beauty of life throughout the universe, it had found a purpose that was infinitely more satisfying than mere consumption. The universe was no longer a place where civilizations lived in fear of being devoured. It had become a place where they could thrive under the protection of an entity that had learned to love what it had once sought to destroy. And at the heart of it all was the simple truth that the humans had shared, that grief and loss, when transformed by love and purpose, could become the foundation for something beautiful and eternal.